It is a great privilege to be talking to you on this subject, which is very dear and at the same time very painful to my heart. The subject chosen has been decoding the idea of Pakistan. I would say that the better title would have been recoding the idea of Pakistan. Recoding. Why recoding? Because we made certain very signal mistakes when we consented in March 1947 to the idea of Pakistan, to the partition of the country and handing it over to the Muslim League. And those mistakes, principally made by Mohandas Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Acharya Kriplani, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, these mistakes continue to haunt us to this day. I would say at the beginning that I am going to say certain things which are going to be rather unpalatable to a lot of people, but I can't help it because these are the bare, unvarnished truths. Because I don't have to face any election right now, and I don't have any constituency to nurse. That is why I am feeling free to air my thoughts. See, if you look at the objectives resolution of Pakistan, which were moved by the Prime Minister Liaquat Ali Khan sometime in 1948 as a sort of a preamble to their constitution, although their constitution was enacted only in 1956 and then dropped in 1958. The objectives resolution is very instructive. The reason they say why Pakistan was created was that the Muslims had a different way of life and they would not have felt free to pursue their way of life in undivided India. Not only that, they said that the objectives resolution said that the Islam is not a matter of private belief. It is to be threaded into every bit of statecraft. It is, in other words, the way I look at it, in other words, it is as much politics as religion, possibly much more politics than religion. Now, these things were ignored by the Indian quartet who considered to the idea of Pakistan. By quartet, I mean principally Mohandas Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. Before this, I would also remind you that in 1945, when the Central Assembly elections were held in British India, immediately after the cessation of the war, 95%, around 95%, I'm not very sure about the exact percentage, but around 95% of the Muslims voted for Pakistan, voted for Muslim League. So if that is the situation, then the logical outcome of any kind of partition of India on the basis of Muslims and non-Muslims should have been that the Muslims all go to Pakistan, non-Muslims remain in India, Hindus, Christians, Parsis, Jains, Buddhists, Sikhs, they all remained in India. This should have been the logical conclusion. But this logical conclusion is not followed. And this is a thing that astounds the whole of the world, that this logical conclusion was not followed. The Muslims, they wanted their Pakistan in order to pursue what they conceived as the place where they would pursue their way of life. They did it, and after having got it, they remained stayed back here. After having got their way of life and their homeland and everything, they stayed back in India. Now, this is a thing which, frankly speaking, did not make any sense to me. Why I am saying this is not because I want the Muslims now to go back to Pakistan, because the clock cannot be turned backwards. It is not possible to turn the clock backwards. But what can be done is that this historical fact ought to be given due importance so that the Hindu-Muslim problem in India can be seen in its proper perspective. I would also emphasize that today in India, the biggest problem is this Hindu-Muslim problem. The problem is not roti kapda makan. These problems are on the way to getting solved. But this Hindu-Muslim problem is a thing which does not give any indication even of how it can get solved. But we will have to eventually find a way. Now, what are the dimensions of this Hindu-Muslim problem? The main dimension is that because a large number of Muslims have stayed back in India, and they have a tendency, like minorities anywhere, to vote in a bloc. That is why they have become the darlings of the so-called quote-unquote secular parties in India. It has almost come to a stage where it has become axiomatic, like it used to be in medieval England, that like in medieval England it used to be said, the Muslim, the king can do no wrong. Sorry. In today's India, it is almost like saying a Muslim can do no wrong. And nowhere this is more prominent or more outstanding, more to the point than in my state of West Bengal and among Bengali Hindus. The strange thing is the exodus of Bengali Hindus from East Pakistan and subsequently Bangladesh is a thing that history forgot. And as a result, many people outside the sphere of West Bengal, they are under the impression that there was a sort of a general amity between Bengal Hindus and Muslims, and they kind of moved from here to there. No great Holocaust was there like there was in Punjab. The facts are completely different. In 1950, right from 1947, the East Pakistan government started persecution of the Hindus in their country in 1947, and this took the place of a economic persecution. Then in 1950, they started a physical persecution in which it is estimated that some 50,000 Hindus were killed and another uh, unknown number of Hindus were kidnapped. Their women were brutalized, and their properties were totally destroyed. Sorry, were you saying something? So this is something that defines the Hindu-Muslim problem because it is not known. That is why this dimension is not discussed during the Hindu-Muslim problem. Now, very few books or very few theses have been written on the displacement of the Hindus from erstwhile East Pakistan and today's Bangladesh. Yours truly happens to be one person who has written such a book. The book is titled My People Uprooted. It is available on Amazon. I would recommend that whoever is interested in this subject can go into this thing. Now, quite apart from this, why am I saying that this recoding instead of decoding, we ought to think of recoding? Recoding is necessary because the so-called the quote-unquote secular parties of India, having totally cast their lot in favor of the axiom that I mentioned, that a Muslim can do no wrong. This has introduced strange distortions into the body politic of India, which are to to say the least destructive. With the result today that even after this dastardly attack on innocent tourists in Pahalgam, you do not find Mamata Banerjee, the Chief Minister of West Bengal, saying anything about it. I mean, she must have said something. I was abroad until yesterday, and I am still not completely briefed of the situation that has so far developed. But to the extent I've been able to find out, he said something absolutely inane and senseless, like terror has no religion. Now, when the assailants, they disrobed the victims and tried to find out whether they are circumcised, and if they were found to be circumcised, they killed them. After this, it is only a totally retarded person who would say that terror has no religion. Terror, of course, has a religion, and at least in this case, the name of that religion is Islam. There is no doubt about it. The terror that we saw in 9/11, the terror that we saw in 26/11, all these terrors had the religion of Islam behind it. In spite of that, our politicians, the quote-unquote secular ones, they are always in favor of finding some wishy-washy excuse to absolve the Muslim Islam religion or the religion of Islam from this thing. Now, you've got to make a distinction between Islam and Muslim. There are hundreds and thousands, millions of good Muslims. But Islam is a different thing altogether. Islam is a religion which does not permit a believer in Islam to allow the non-believer to live side by side with him. This has been proved by the innumerable riots that have taken place, and more so because these riots could be quelled by only counter-violence. What happened in 2002 in Gujarat is something which is absolutely, I would say, a milestone. What happened is that the Ghanchi Muslims of Godhra station, they set fire to a train, and that train was caught fire, and 57 innocent Hindu pilgrims were burnt alive to death. Now, after this, the Chief Minister of the state, who is currently our revered Prime Minister, he had said to every action there is bound to be equal and opposite reaction. Now, it is not as if he had said it. A gentleman called Isaac Newton had said it some 4 centuries back, and it is a fact of life. But when he said it, there was an uproar all over the country because he was the first one to say anything against this axiom. But he rubbished this axiom, and gradually people have come to understand that we have been following a wrong politics so far. The axioms, the basis of politics so far that India has followed are basically wrong, and it has done untold damage to the body politic of India. Today, Muslims are there in India. They ought to remain in India. There is no way in which they can be sent back to Pakistan. But at the same time, it is necessary, in view of Pakistan having Pakistan having been created for the benefit of Indian Muslims, it is necessary that from time to time they prove that they are loyal to India. Now, if I say this, then a lot of people, particularly in my state of West Bengal, they would absolutely beat their chests and say that, is it possible that a human being can be heard to say such a thing in secular India? Yes, I am a human being, and I am a citizen of secular India, and I am saying it. because the country was partitioned on the basis of Muslim and non-Muslim, the Muslims who have stayed back in India willy-nilly, they ought to they ought to prove from time to time their loyalty to this country. How they prove it, there are hundreds of ways. I am not going to elaborate on that. But this is something which is essential because the Christians did not ask for a partition, Sikhs did not ask for a partition, a lunatic fringe among them did, but nobody has given it any importance and they have gradually waned away. Jains definitely not, the Jews or Parsis definitely not. The ones who wanted partition, got partition and stayed back in India, some extra duty devolves on them. This is my considered opinion. Now, this is a part of the decoding or recoding, however you put it, and this has got to be done. Because I know that there are hundreds of, as I said, millions of patriotic Muslims in India. Sorry, there are the millions of people who are committed to the idea of India, but nevertheless, the historical fact remains that it is for the sake of their religion that the country was partitioned, and therefore it is necessary. Uh, More than that, the other thing that I mentioned, that not only was the country partitioned on the basis of their religion, but they had 95% of them, they had, sorry, voted in favor of creation of Pakistan in the 1945 elections. That being so, it is necessary for them to reinforce, to emphasize that they remain loyal to India, and particularly so where they are a large majority, like for instance in states like or regions like Jammu and Kashmir, West Bengal, Assam, the northern part of Kerala. These Out of these, Jammu and Kashmir, West Bengal, and Assam are particularly important because they adjoin a Muslim majority country where uh, persecution and torture of Hindus go on at a terrible pace. In Pakistan, when the country was partitioned, there were 19% Hindus and Sikhs. It has now come down to 1%. In Bangladesh, when the country was partitioned, there were 29% of Hindus, a small number of Christians and Buddhists. It has now come down to 8%. And this would not have been possible without persecution in their country. In fact, they make no secret of persecution. They say that it is part of Islam, this is an Islamic country, etc., etc. So that being so, it is incumbent on the Muslim population of India to emphasize that not only they have allegiance to India, but also they unequivocally condemn the persecution of non-Muslims in Pakistan and Bangladesh. This is more or less, in this limited time possible, this is more or less what I had to say, because these are things that very few people have said so far. I know one or two persons who have said it, but the opposite has been said by a large number of people. Just to give you an example about the opposite, Mushahid Hussain, formerly I think he was a minister in Pakistan. Mushahid Hussain has said that India is a huge country. There are a lot of people who support Pakistan. And he has mentioned also people like Arundhati Roy, people like Mamta Banerjee, people like the left parties, the Congress, the Dalit parties, all these people, they support India. So they support Pakistan. So this has got to be, it devolves, a duty devolves on the minority community of India, that is to say Muslims, a duty devolves on them to rubbish this and to say that no, these people are wrong, and our total allegiance is towards India. We condemn any kind of this persecution of non-Muslims in Pakistan and Bangladesh. Beyond that, whatever else happens is of secondary importance. But the most important thing is that we must be absolutely sure of the allegiance of the Muslims who have stayed back in India. To my mind, that is the bottom line in any kind of decoding or recoding exercise. Thank you very, very much for having given this opportunity, given me this opportunity to speak. Thank you.